Have you ever wondered why the name Cleopatra still echoes through history after more than 2,000 years, when countless other rulers have faded into obscurity? Tonight, as the gentle current of the Nile carries us back through time, we'll discover that behind the myths and Hollywood glamour lies a story far more captivating than any legend ever imagined. Close your eyes and let me transport you to a world where the Mediterranean Sea sparkled like scattered diamonds under an ancient moon, where the greatest library in the world held secrets that would astound us even today, and where a young princess was being groomed not just to rule an empire, but to become one of history's most brilliant political minds. You see, most people know Cleopatra only as a beautiful seductress, but that narrative barely scratches the surface of who she really was. She was a mathematician, a linguist, a naval commander, an economist, and a diplomat whose political strategies were so sophisticated that they influenced governance for centuries to come. Tonight, we'll uncover the real woman behind the crown, and by the end of our journey, you'll understand why her legacy continues to inspire leaders, scholars, and dreamers around the world. So settle in comfortably, let your breathing slow and deepen as we drift back to the year 69 BCE, when the world was about to witness the birth of one of history's most extraordinary figures. Picture the grand palace of Alexandria, where the warm Mediterranean breeze carries the scent of jasmine through marble corridors, and where the future of an empire rests in the tiny hands of a newborn princess. The Egypt that welcomed Cleopatra into the world was unlike anywhere else on Earth. Imagine walking through the streets of Alexandria in those days, where Greek philosophers debated beside Egyptian priests, where Roman merchants haggled with Nubian traders, and where the famous lighthouse stood as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, its beacon guiding ships safely home across the darkening waters. This was the Ptolemaic kingdom, a realm that had been ruled by Cleopatra's Greek ancestors for nearly 3 centuries since Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. The Ptolemies had created something magical here, a fusion of Greek learning, Egyptian tradition, and international commerce that made Alexandria the New York City of the ancient world. And into this remarkable civilization, our young princess was born. From her earliest days, Cleopatra breathed in an atmosphere of learning and luxury that would shape her into the remarkable leader she would become. The palace libraries contained hundreds of thousands of scrolls, the accumulated wisdom of the ancient world. Here, young Cleopatra would spend countless hours absorbing knowledge that most rulers of her time never even knew existed. But let's pause for a moment and consider what childhood was like for a future pharaoh. While other children played simple games, Cleopatra was learning the intricate art of statecraft. Picture her as a small girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, sitting in on diplomatic meetings where her father, Ptolemy XII, negotiated with Roman senators and Egyptian high priests. She would have watched carefully, those intelligent dark eyes taking in every gesture, every subtle shift in tone, every strategic pause in conversation. Her education was extraordinary by any standard, ancient or modern. While most women of her era, even royal ones, received only basic instruction in household management and perhaps some music or poetry, Cleopatra's tutors were the finest scholars money could attract. They came from Athens, from Rhodes, from the great centers of learning throughout the Mediterranean, and they brought with them knowledge that would have been considered revolutionary. Mathematics was one of her favorite subjects, and she quickly mastered concepts that challenged even her adult tutors. Imagine her working late into the evening by lamplight, calculating trade routes and taxation systems, already thinking like the ruler she would one day become. She understood that numbers were power, that the pharaoh who could master Egypt's complex economy would be the pharaoh who could maintain independence in an increasingly Roman world. But perhaps even more impressive was her linguistic ability. By the time she reached adolescence, Cleopatra could speak fluently in Greek, Egyptian, Latin, Hebrew, Arabic, Ethiopian, and several other languages that have been lost to history. This wasn't just showing off. It was strategic brilliance. When she spoke to Egyptian farmers in their native tongue, or negotiated with Jewish merchants in Hebrew, or charmed Roman diplomats in perfect Latin, she was building bridges that previous Ptolemaic rulers had never even attempted to construct. Her father, Ptolemy XII, recognized early on that his daughter possessed something special. Unlike his sons, who seemed content with the pleasures of palace life, Cleopatra demonstrated an insatiable curiosity about everything, from military tactics to agricultural techniques. She would often slip away from her tutors to wander through Alexandria's bustling markets, talking with merchants and craftsmen, learning about the real Egypt that existed beyond the palace walls. These early adventures through the city streets taught her lessons no classroom could provide. She learned how the seasonal flooding of the Nile affected grain prices, how political rumors spread through the bazaars faster than official proclamations, and how ordinary Egyptians viewed their Greek-descended rulers. This knowledge would prove invaluable when she eventually took the throne, but for now, she was simply a curious teenager soaking up the rhythms of her future kingdom. The political situation during Cleopatra's youth was precarious and complex. Rome's influence over Egypt grew stronger each year, and her father's reign was marked by constant tension between maintaining Egyptian independence and appeasing Roman demands. Young Cleopatra watched as her father was forced into exile and then restored to power with Roman help, a humiliating cycle that taught her crucial lessons about the delicate balance of international politics. During one of these political crises, when Cleopatra was about 14, she accompanied her father to Rome itself. Picture this teenage princess walking through the Forum, observing the heart of the empire that increasingly controlled her homeland's destiny. She would have seen the magnificent temples, the bustling crowds, the impressive architecture that demonstrated Rome's wealth and power. But more importantly, she would have studied the Roman political system, watching senators debate and observing how the world's most powerful republic actually functioned. This visit to Rome was transformative for young Cleopatra. She realized that Egypt's survival depended not on military strength alone, but on diplomatic skill and economic leverage. Egypt controlled the grain that fed much of the Roman world, and she began to understand how this resource could be used as both carrot and stick in negotiations with Rome. The seeds of her later political strategies were planted during these formative experiences in the Eternal City. Back in Alexandria, Cleopatra's education continued to expand in remarkable directions. She studied naval architecture and could discuss the technical specifications of warships with her admirals. She learned about medicine and astronomy, understanding how the flooding of the Nile could be predicted by observing the stars. She mastered the art of rhetoric, practicing speeches that could inspire soldiers before battle or convince skeptical nobles to support her policies. But perhaps most importantly, she learned about the delicate art of ruling a diverse population. Egypt in her time was incredibly cosmopolitan. Alexandria alone contained Greeks, Romans, Jews, Syrians, Nubians, and native Egyptians, each group with its own customs, languages, and loyalties. Previous Ptolemaic rulers had often favored the Greek elite, treating other populations as subjects rather than citizens. Cleopatra began to envision a different approach, one that would embrace Egypt's diversity as a source of strength rather than viewing it as a challenge to manage. Her teenage years were also marked by intensive study of Egyptian religion and culture. While her ancestors had often maintained a somewhat aloof relationship with native Egyptian traditions, Cleopatra immersed herself completely. She learned to read hieroglyphs, participated in religious ceremonies at the great temples, and began to understand the spiritual significance of the pharaoh's role in Egyptian society. This religious education was more than ceremonial. The pharaoh was considered a living god, the earthly representative of divine power, and Cleopatra understood that this spiritual authority was just as important as political power. She spent countless hours with the high priests of Ptah, Isis, and other major deities, learning the intricate rituals and theological concepts that would legitimize her eventual rule in the eyes of her Egyptian subjects. As she approached her 18th birthday, Cleopatra had transformed from a curious princess into a formidable young woman whose education surpassed that of most rulers in the ancient world. She could debate philosophy with Greek scholars, discuss engineering projects with Roman architects, negotiate trade agreements in multiple languages, and perform the sacred rituals that connected her to Egypt's 3,000-year-old traditions. The palace staff who had watched her grow up began to whisper among themselves about the remarkable transformation they had witnessed. Here was a princess who could spend the morning reviewing tax records, the afternoon practicing sword techniques with her guard, and the evening translating poetry from Greek into Egyptian. Her energy seemed boundless, her curiosity insatiable, and her intelligence absolutely extraordinary. But even as Cleopatra's abilities continued to develop, the political situation around her grew increasingly unstable. Her father's health was declining, and questions about the succession began to dominate palace conversations. According to Ptolemaic tradition, she would need to share power with one of her younger brothers, but Cleopatra had already begun to envision a different future for herself and for Egypt. The stage was being set for one of history's most dramatic ascensions to power, as this remarkable young woman prepared to claim her birthright and transform not just Egypt, but the entire ancient world. Her childhood and education had given her tools that no previous pharaoh had possessed, and she was about to put them to use in ways that would echo through the centuries. As we pause here in our journey through Cleopatra's early life, let your mind drift peacefully back to that moonlit palace in Alexandria, where a teenage princess studied late into the night, surrounded by scrolls and dreams of the future. Tomorrow, we'll continue our story as Cleopatra steps onto the world stage and begins the remarkable reign that would make her immortal. Let the gentle sounds of the Nile at night carry you deeper into our story, as we witness the moment when destiny called upon a young woman to become a legend. The year is 51 BCE, and the magnificent Palace of Alexandria is shrouded in an atmosphere of anticipation and uncertainty. Ptolemy XII lies dying, and with his final breaths, he sets in motion events that will reshape the ancient world. Picture Cleopatra, now 18 years old, standing beside her father's deathbed as the Mediterranean moonlight filters through the palace windows. She has spent her entire life preparing for this moment, yet nothing could have truly readied her for the weight of responsibility that now settles upon her shoulders like a royal cloak. The crown of Egypt, with all its glory and burden, is about to become hers. According to the ancient customs of her dynasty, Cleopatra must share the throne with her 10-year-old brother Ptolemy XIII. But even as the coronation ceremonies begin, she understands that this arrangement is merely temporary. Her brother is little more than a child, easily influenced by the ambitious courtiers who surround him, while she possesses the knowledge, experience, and vision to rule Egypt alone. The early months of her reign reveal the full extent of Cleopatra's political genius. While other rulers might have been content to follow established traditions, she immediately begins implementing changes that demonstrate her deep understanding of Egypt's unique position in the ancient world. She recognizes that her kingdom sits at the crossroads of Africa, Asia, and Europe, making it the natural hub for trade, culture, and diplomacy. One of her first acts as pharaoh is to personally visit the Great Temple of Ptah in Memphis, where she participates in the sacred rituals that formally recognize her as the divine ruler of Egypt. But this is no mere ceremonial gesture. By speaking to the priests and worshippers in fluent Egyptian, she signals to her subjects that she is different from her predecessors, that she truly understands and respects the ancient traditions that bind Egypt together. The economic challenges facing Egypt at this time would have overwhelmed a lesser ruler, but Cleopatra approaches them with the mathematical precision she learned during her childhood education. The kingdom's finances are strained by tribute payments to Rome, yet she discovers innovative ways to increase revenue without overburdening her people. She reorganizes the tax collection system, eliminates corruption among provincial governors, and establishes new trade partnerships that bring unprecedented wealth flowing into Egyptian coffers. Her reforms extend far beyond mere bookkeeping. Cleopatra understands that Egypt's greatest asset is its agricultural productivity, particularly the grain that feeds much of the Roman world. She personally travels throughout the kingdom, visiting farms and irrigation projects, consulting with engineers about improving the complex system of canals and dikes that channel the Nile's annual flood. These journeys also serve a political purpose, as they allow her subjects to see their pharaoh in person, to witness her genuine concern for their welfare. The young queen's intellectual curiosity continues to drive her even amid the pressures of rulership. She establishes new schools throughout Alexandria, attracts brilliant scholars to her court, and personally participates in the philosophical debates that make her capital the intellectual center of the ancient world. The Great Library of Alexandria reaches new heights of magnificence under her patronage, with scribes working tirelessly to copy and preserve the accumulated wisdom of human civilization. But it is Cleopatra's mastery of languages that truly sets her apart as a ruler. When Arabian merchants visit her court, she negotiates with them in Arabic. When Jewish leaders seek audience, she addresses them in Hebrew. When Roman diplomats arrive, she speaks to them in Latin so perfect that they forget she is not Roman herself. This linguistic versatility is more than impressive showmanship. It is practical diplomacy of the highest order, allowing her to build personal relationships with leaders throughout the known world. As her confidence grows, so does the opposition she faces from within her own court. Her younger brother Ptolemy XIII, now guided by ambitious advisors who see an opportunity to seize real power, begins to challenge her authority. The traditional faction of Greek nobles, who have always resented any pharaoh who showed too much favor to native Egyptians, quietly works to undermine her reforms. The situation grows increasingly tense, as competing claims to legitimacy create dangerous divisions within the royal court. The crisis comes to a head when civil war erupts between the two siblings, each claiming to be the rightful ruler of Egypt. Cleopatra finds herself forced to flee Alexandria, gathering loyal supporters as she retreats toward the Syrian border. For many rulers, such a setback would mark the end of their ambitions. But for Cleopatra, it becomes an opportunity to demonstrate the full extent of her remarkable abilities. During her months in exile, she reveals talents that even her closest advisors had not fully appreciated. She proves herself to be a brilliant military strategist, personally planning the campaigns that will restore her to power. She demonstrates remarkable endurance, marching alongside her soldiers through desert heat and sleeping in simple tents rather than demanding royal accommodations. Most importantly, she shows an ability to inspire absolute loyalty among her followers, who come to see her not just as their queen, but as their champion against the corrupt forces that have driven her from her rightful throne. The turning point comes when Cleopatra learns that Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, has arrived in Alexandria pursuing his rival Pompey in their own civil war. Here is an opportunity that a lesser politician might have missed entirely, but Cleopatra immediately grasps its significance. Caesar represents both danger and opportunity, a chance to secure Roman support for her cause, but also the risk of reducing Egypt to a mere Roman province. The famous story of how she smuggled herself into Caesar's presence, hidden in a carpet or laundry bundle, captures the imagination precisely because it reveals so much about her character. This is not the action of a desperate refugee, but the calculated move of a master strategist who understands that dramatic gestures sometimes achieve more than formal diplomacy. When she emerges before the astonished Roman general, she is not pleading for help, but proposing an alliance between equals. The meeting between Cleopatra and Caesar marks the beginning of one of history's most consequential partnerships. But we must understand that their relationship, while certainly romantic, was fundamentally political. Cleopatra sees in Caesar a way to secure Egypt's independence while maintaining access to Roman markets and protection. Caesar sees in her a brilliant ally who can help him control the Eastern Mediterranean while providing the wealth needed to fund his own ambitions. Their negotiations demonstrate Cleopatra's sophisticated understanding of international politics. She does not simply ask for Roman military support to regain her throne. Instead, she proposes a comprehensive alliance that addresses Caesar's strategic needs while preserving Egypt's essential autonomy. She offers him the financial resources of her kingdom, the logistical support of her navy, and the diplomatic connections she has cultivated throughout the region. The restoration of Cleopatra to power, accomplished with Caesar's backing, showcases her remarkable ability to transform military victory into lasting political success. Rather than simply punishing her enemies, she demonstrates the magnanimity that marks great rulers throughout history. She pardons many of those who opposed her, incorporating them back into her administration while ensuring their loyalty through a combination of generous treatment and careful monitoring. Her brother Ptolemy XIII dies during the conflict. Whether by accident or design remains unclear, leaving Cleopatra free to rule Egypt without the burden of shared power. But she continues to observe the traditional forms, marrying her even younger brother Ptolemy XIV, who poses no threat to her authority while satisfying the dynastic requirements that legitimize her reign in the eyes of conservative nobles. The months that Caesar spends in Alexandria reveal the full extent of Cleopatra's intellectual partnership with the Roman general. Together, they tour the Great Library, discuss philosophical questions with assembled scholars, and plan ambitious construction projects that will further enhance Alexandria's reputation as the jewel of the Mediterranean. Caesar, who is himself a brilliant writer and scholar, finds in Cleopatra a rare equal, someone who can match his own intellectual curiosity and strategic vision. But their most significant collaboration is the birth of their son, Caesarion, whose very existence represents Cleopatra's long-term strategy for Egypt's future. This child, combining the bloodlines of the Ptolemies and the Caesars, embodies her vision of a partnership between Egypt and Rome that preserves her kingdom's independence while securing its prosperity. The boy becomes not just her heir, but a living symbol of the new order she hopes to create. When Caesar departs Alexandria to continue his campaigns, Cleopatra has achieved something remarkable. She has not only regained her throne, but has transformed Egypt's relationship with Rome from one of subordination to one of alliance. Her kingdom remains independent, its wealth intact, its cultural traditions respected. Yet she has also secured the protection and partnership of the world's most powerful military leader. The news of Caesar's assassination in 44 BCE reaches Alexandria like a thunderbolt, threatening to destroy everything Cleopatra has built. With her protector dead and Rome plunged into chaos, Egypt once again faces the prospect of becoming a mere province in someone else's empire. But rather than despair, Cleopatra sees this crisis as another opportunity to demonstrate her remarkable resilience and strategic brilliance. As various Roman leaders struggle for control of Caesar's legacy, Cleopatra carefully evaluates each potential successor, seeking the one who can best serve Egypt's interests, while honoring her partnership with the murdered general. Her choice eventually falls upon Mark Antony, one of Caesar's most trusted lieutenants, a man whose military prowess and political connections make him a natural ally for her ambitions. The famous meeting between Cleopatra and Antony on her golden barge reveals once again her mastery of symbolic diplomacy. Every detail of this encounter is carefully orchestrated to create maximum impact, from her costume as the goddess Aphrodite to the magnificent display of Egyptian wealth and artistry that surrounds her. But beneath the theatrical spectacle lies serious political calculation, as she works to forge a new alliance that will secure Egypt's future in the post-Caesar world. Their partnership proves even more productive than her relationship with Caesar had been. Together, Cleopatra and Antony envision an Eastern empire that combines Roman military might with Egyptian wealth and Egyptian wisdom. They plan campaigns that will extend their joint influence from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean, creating a power base strong enough to rival Rome itself. During these years of partnership with Antony, Cleopatra reaches the pinnacle of her powers as both ruler and diplomat. Picture her now in her late 20s, no longer the young woman who had to smuggle herself into Caesar's presence, but a mature queen whose reputation extends across the known world. Her palace in Alexandria has become a center of learning and culture that rivals anything Rome can offer, while her personal influence shapes events from Britain to India. The economic achievements of her reign during this period are nothing short of extraordinary. Under her guidance, Egypt experiences a golden age of prosperity that benefits not just the wealthy elite, but ordinary farmers, craftsmen, and merchants throughout the kingdom. She revolutionizes the ancient trade routes that connect Africa with Asia and Europe, establishing new partnerships with kingdoms as distant as India and Ethiopia. Egyptian ships, flying her personal standard, become familiar sights in harbors from Spain to the Persian Gulf. Her innovations in agriculture transform Egypt into an even more productive granary for the ancient world. Working closely with engineers and farmers, she oversees the construction of new irrigation systems that increase crop yields while reducing the labor required for cultivation. These projects employ thousands of workers, stimulating the economy while improving the lives of rural communities that had been neglected by previous rulers. But perhaps most remarkably, Cleopatra begins to envision Egypt as something more than just a regional power. Her correspondence with rulers throughout the ancient world reveals a woman thinking on a truly global scale, planning trade networks that would span continents and diplomatic alliances that would reshape the balance of international power. She exchanges gifts and ambassadors with the Queen of Ethiopia, negotiates commercial treaties with Arabian princes, and maintains friendly relations with the distant kingdoms of India. The cultural flowering of Alexandria under her patronage attracts scholars, artists, and philosophers from every corner of the Mediterranean world. The Great Library expands to contain nearly 500,000 scrolls, while the museum becomes a research center where brilliant minds collaborate on projects that advance human knowledge in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and engineering. Cleopatra herself participates actively in these intellectual pursuits, contributing to discussions on subjects ranging from naval architecture to agricultural chemistry. Her mastery of languages continues to serve her well in these international dealings. When she receives delegations from distant lands, she often astonishes visitors by addressing them in their native tongues, demonstrating not just linguistic skill, but genuine respect for their cultures. These personal touches help her build the kind of trust and rapport that formal diplomacy alone cannot achieve, creating lasting partnerships that benefit Egypt for generations. The military aspects of her reign also deserve recognition, though they are often overshadowed by her diplomatic achievements. Cleopatra proves herself to be an exceptionally capable naval commander, personally overseeing the construction of a fleet that becomes one of the most formidable in the ancient world. Her ships are not just instruments of war, but floating ambassadors that carry Egyptian influence to distant shores, while protecting the trade routes that bring prosperity to her kingdom. During joint campaigns with Antony, she demonstrates remarkable strategic insight, often suggesting tactics that prove crucial to their victories. Her understanding of logistics, gained from years of managing Egypt's complex economy, helps their armies remain supplied and effective, even during extended campaigns far from home. Roman historians, despite their later hostility toward her, grudgingly acknowledge her military competence, and her ability to inspire fierce loyalty among her troops. The children she bears during this period represent more than just personal happiness. They embody her vision for Egypt's future. In addition to Caesarion, her son with Julius Caesar, she has 3 children with Antony, each one a potential bridge between Egyptian and Roman interests. She personally oversees their education, ensuring they master the same diverse curriculum that shaped her own development, while preparing them for the complex political challenges they will eventually face. Her relationship with the Egyptian people during these prosperous years reveals the full extent of her political genius. Unlike previous Ptolemaic rulers who remained isolated in Alexandria, Cleopatra regularly travels throughout her kingdom, visiting temples, inspecting public works projects, and meeting with local leaders. These journeys are not mere ceremonial occasions, but working visits where she addresses real problems and implements practical solutions. The religious dimension of her reign continues to deepen as she matures as a ruler. She becomes increasingly identified with the goddess Isis, not just in ceremonial contexts, but as a living embodiment of divine wisdom and protection. This spiritual authority proves just as important as her political power, creating bonds with her subjects that transcend mere loyalty to government and approach genuine devotion to their queen as a sacred figure. Her court during these years attracts visitors from across the known world, all eager to witness the splendor of the last great pharaoh. Ambassadors return to their home countries with tales of banquets, where the food is served on golden plates, where the entertainment includes performances by the finest musicians and dancers in the world, and where the queen herself participates in philosophical discussions that continue long into the night. But beneath all this magnificence, Cleopatra never loses sight of the practical challenges that face her kingdom. She continues to modernize Egypt's administrative systems, creating more efficient methods for tax collection, record keeping, and communication between the capital and distant provinces. Her reforms ensure that royal decrees reach even the most remote villages, while reports from local officials flow back to Alexandria with unprecedented speed and accuracy. The scientific and technological advances sponsored by her court have lasting impact far beyond Egypt's borders. Alexandrian scholars, working with resources she provides, make breakthrough discoveries in astronomy that improve navigation for merchants and naval commanders throughout the Mediterranean. Medical researchers supported by royal patronage develop new treatments for diseases that have plagued humanity for centuries. Engineers design architectural innovations that influence construction projects across the ancient world. Her personal library, separate from the great public collection, contains works in dozens of languages, many of them acquired through her extensive correspondence with rulers and scholars worldwide. She reads voraciously, staying current with philosophical developments in Athens, scientific discoveries in Rhodes, and historical chronicles from Rome. This intellectual curiosity keeps her informed about trends and events that might affect Egypt's interests, while also satisfying her genuine love of learning for its own sake. The diplomatic protocols she establishes become models that other courts throughout the ancient world eventually adopt. Her innovations in ceremonial practice, gift exchange, and treaty negotiation reflect her deep understanding of human psychology and cultural differences. Foreign ambassadors often comment on the skill with which she manages to honor their traditions while maintaining Egypt's dignity and independence. As her partnership with Antony deepens and expands, their joint vision for the future becomes increasingly ambitious. They plan to create an Eastern empire that would stretch from the Atlantic Ocean to the borders of China, combining Roman military organization with Egyptian wealth and administrative expertise. This grand design requires careful coordination between their respective territories, leading to innovations in communication and transportation that benefit both kingdoms. The naval expeditions they sponsor together explore trade routes that previous generations had considered impossibly dangerous. Egyptian and Roman ships, sailing under joint command, establish commercial relationships with kingdoms along the African coast, in the Arabian Peninsula, and beyond the Persian Gulf. These voyages bring back not just exotic goods, but knowledge of distant peoples and cultures that enriches the cosmopolitan atmosphere of Alexandria. Her influence on Roman culture during this period is often underestimated by historians who focus primarily on military and political events. Through her relationship with Antony and the Roman officers who serve in Egypt, she introduces Eastern customs, artistic styles, and intellectual traditions that gradually transform Roman society. The luxury goods, architectural techniques, and scholarly works that flow from Egypt to Rome help create the cultural synthesis that will characterize the later Roman Empire. The festivals and celebrations she organizes in Alexandria become legendary throughout the ancient world, attracting visitors who travel thousands of miles just to witness these spectacular events. But these gatherings serve serious political purposes, as well as providing entertainment. They offer opportunities for diplomatic negotiations, commercial agreements, and cultural exchanges that strengthen Egypt's position in the complex web of international relationships. Her personal involvement in every aspect of government continues to astonish those who work with her. She reviews financial reports with the same attention to detail that she brings to military planning or religious ceremonies. Her memory for names, dates, and statistical information becomes legendary among her administrators, who learn that she expects them to match her own standards of thoroughness and accuracy. The construction projects undertaken during her reign transform Alexandria into one of the most beautiful cities in the ancient world. New temples, libraries, theatres, and public buildings rise throughout the capital, each one designed to showcase both Egyptian traditions and international influences. These architectural achievements create employment for thousands of skilled craftsmen, while demonstrating Egypt's prosperity and cultural sophistication to visitors from around the world. But even as Cleopatra reaches the height of her power and influence, she remains acutely aware of the gathering storm clouds on the horizon. The political situation in Rome grows increasingly unstable, with various factions competing for control of the Republic's destiny. Her intelligence network, one of the most sophisticated in the ancient world, brings her regular reports of developments that could threaten everything she has built. The growing hostility between Antony and Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, creates particular concern for Egypt's future. She understands that this conflict will eventually force her to choose sides, and that the wrong choice could mean the end of Egyptian independence. Her preparations for this coming crisis demonstrate once again her remarkable ability to think strategically while managing the immediate demands of ruling a complex kingdom. As we pause here in our journey through Cleopatra's remarkable reign, let the gentle rhythm of the Nile carry your thoughts back to those golden days when Alexandria stood as the jewel of the ancient world, and when a brilliant queen worked tirelessly to secure her people's prosperity and independence. The challenges ahead will test every skill she has developed, every alliance she has forged, and every dream she has dared to pursue. The shadows of conflict begin to lengthen across the Mediterranean as we continue our peaceful journey through Cleopatra's extraordinary life. Picture her now in her palace study, surrounded by maps and scrolls, the flickering oil lamps casting dancing patterns on the walls as she works late into the night. At 34, she has become one of the most powerful rulers in the ancient world, yet she faces challenges that would have broken lesser monarchs. The tension between Mark Antony and Octavian has escalated beyond mere political rivalry into open warfare, and Cleopatra understands that Egypt's fate hangs in the balance. Her spies throughout the Roman world send regular reports that paint an increasingly dire picture. Octavian has proven himself to be a masterful propagandist, portraying Antony as a traitor who has fallen under the spell of an exotic foreign queen. The Roman people, already suspicious of Eastern influences, begin to view Egypt not as an ally, but as a threat to their traditional values. Let your mind drift peacefully as we observe Cleopatra during these crucial months, watching her navigate the treacherous waters of international politics with the same skill she once applied to her childhood studies. She recognizes that this conflict will determine not just her personal survival, but the continuation of 3,000 years of Egyptian civilization. The weight of history rests upon her shoulders, yet she approaches each decision with the calm deliberation that has always marked her leadership. Her preparations for the coming war reveal the full extent of her administrative genius. Throughout Egypt, shipyards work around the clock to construct vessels for her growing fleet. She personally oversees the design of new warships that incorporate innovations learned from captured Roman vessels, while maintaining the superior maneuverability that has always characterized Egyptian naval architecture. These ships will carry not just soldiers and weapons, but the hopes of an entire civilization. The economic mobilization she orchestrates demonstrates her profound understanding of warfare as more than just military tactics. She restructures Egypt's entire production system to support the war effort, yet manages to do so without causing hardship for her people. Grain surpluses are carefully managed to feed both civilian populations and military forces. Textile workshops produce uniforms and sailcloth. Metalworkers forge weapons and armor, using techniques perfected over centuries of Egyptian craftsmanship. Her diplomatic efforts during this period showcase the extensive network of relationships she has built throughout her reign. Messages flow constantly between Alexandria and courts across the known world as she seeks to build a coalition that can match Roman power. From the mountain kingdoms of Armenia to the desert principalities of Arabia, rulers who have benefited from Egyptian trade and friendship now face pressure to choose sides in the coming conflict. The personal cost of these preparations weighs heavily upon Cleopatra's heart, though she rarely allows others to see her private struggles. Her children, the living symbols of her partnerships with Rome's greatest leaders, represent both her greatest achievements and her deepest vulnerabilities. Caesarion, now approaching manhood, embodies her hopes for a future that bridges Egyptian and Roman civilizations. Her younger children with Antony carry the promise of continuing alliances, yet their very existence makes them targets for Octavian's hatred. During quiet moments stolen from the constant demands of war preparation, Cleopatra continues to pursue the intellectual interests that have always sustained her spirit. She corresponds with philosophers in Athens, exchanges astronomical observations with scholars in Rhodes, and maintains her support for the research projects that make Alexandria the intellectual capital of the ancient world. Even facing the greatest crisis of her reign, she refuses to abandon the pursuit of knowledge that defines her civilization. Her religious duties take on heightened significance as the crisis deepens. The Egyptian people look to their pharaoh not just as a political leader, but as a divine intermediary who can invoke the god's protection for their homeland. She spends long hours in the great temples, participating in ceremonies that have sustained Egypt through previous invasions and occupations. The priests who serve with her speak of an aura of serene determination that surrounds her during these sacred rituals. The intelligence reports that reach her desk paint an increasingly clear picture of Octavian's strategy. He has chosen to portray the coming conflict not as a civil war between Romans, but as a patriotic struggle against foreign influence. Cleopatra becomes the central figure in his propaganda campaign, depicted as a scheming seductress who has corrupted noble Roman virtues. She understands that defeating Octavian will require not just military victory, but a counter-narrative that reveals the truth about her motivations and achievements. Her meetings with Antony during this period reveal the deep partnership they have forged over years of collaboration. Together, they plan campaigns that will leverage Egypt's naval superiority and economic resources against Octavian's control of Italy and the western provinces. Their strategy recognizes that victory requires not just winning battles, but maintaining the loyalty of populations throughout the eastern Mediterranean who have prospered under their joint rule. The construction of their combined fleet becomes one of the greatest maritime projects in ancient history. Egyptian shipbuilders work alongside Roman engineers, creating vessels that incorporate the best features of both naval traditions. These ships are not just instruments of war, but floating testaments to the cultural synthesis that Cleopatra and Antony represent. Each vessel carries crews drawn from across their territories, men who fight not just for personal loyalty, but for a vision of international cooperation. As spring arrives in the year 31 BCE, the opposing forces begin their final movements toward the confrontation that will determine the future of the ancient world. Cleopatra personally leads her fleet out of Alexandria, the golden prow of her flagship cutting through the Mediterranean waves as hundreds of ships follow in her wake. The sight of this armada, with its colourful banners and diverse crews, represents the culmination of her life's work in building bridges between different peoples and cultures. The naval battle that unfolds near Actium becomes one of history's most consequential engagements, though its outcome is determined as much by treachery and miscommunication as by tactical skill. Picture the scene as hundreds of warships maneuver in the choppy waters off the Greek coast, their bronze rams gleaming in the afternoon sun, while soldiers and sailors prepare for combat that will reshape the Mediterranean world. Cleopatra's personal conduct during the battle reveals both her courage and her strategic wisdom. When the tide of combat turns against their forces, she makes the agonizing decision to withdraw her surviving ships rather than see them destroyed in a hopeless fight. This retreat, later portrayed by Roman historians as cowardice, actually represents the calculated decision of a ruler who understands that preserving her fleet offers the only hope for continued resistance. The aftermath of Actium finds Cleopatra back in Alexandria, her dreams of Eastern Empire shattered, but her determination to protect Egypt undiminished. She spends the following months preparing her kingdom for siege, while also exploring every diplomatic avenue that might preserve Egyptian independence. Her correspondence during this period reveals a woman who refuses to despair even as her options steadily diminish. The defensive preparations she oversees transform Alexandria into one of the ancient world's strongest fortresses. The harbour is fortified with new installations that can sink any vessel attempting unauthorized entry. The city walls are reinforced and supplied with provisions that could sustain a lengthy siege. Most importantly, she ensures that Egypt's vast wealth is secured in ways that prevent Octavian from simply seizing it upon conquest. Her final negotiations with Octavian demonstrate the diplomatic skills that have served her throughout her reign. Even from a position of apparent weakness, she attempts to secure terms that would preserve Egypt's autonomy while acknowledging Roman supremacy. These discussions reveal her continued commitment to her people's welfare, as she seeks arrangements that would protect them from the harsh exploitation that typically followed Roman conquest. The legendary accounts of her death, whether by asp bite or poison, capture the imagination because they reflect the dramatic flair that characterized her entire life. But more significant than the manner of her passing is the careful preparation she makes for Egypt's future. Her final acts as pharaoh include arrangements for her children's safety, provisions for her loyal servants, and instructions that ensure Egyptian treasures will be preserved rather than melted down for Roman coffers. The immediate aftermath of Cleopatra's death sees Octavian's forces occupy Alexandria, bringing to an end nearly 3 centuries of Ptolemaic rule and 3 millennia of Egyptian independence. Yet, even in defeat, her legacy begins to take shape in ways that will influence the ancient world for generations to come. The cultural synthesis she promoted between Egyptian, Greek, and Roman traditions becomes part of the foundation for the cosmopolitan civilization that will characterize the Roman Empire at its height. The scholars and artists who flourished under her patronage carry their knowledge and skills throughout the Mediterranean world, spreading innovations in science, medicine, engineering, and literature that enrich human civilization. The trade networks she established continue to function under Roman administration, connecting distant regions in commercial relationships that promote prosperity and cultural exchange. The architectural achievements of her reign inspire builders and designers across the empire, influencing the development of new styles that combine Eastern and Western elements. Her children, despite the tragic circumstances of their mother's defeat, carry forward aspects of her vision in their own lives. Those who survive Octavian's purges eventually find places in the Roman world, where their Egyptian heritage and cosmopolitan education make them valuable contributors to imperial administration and culture. Through them, something of Cleopatra's internationalist perspective influences the development of Roman policy toward the eastern provinces. The historical reputation she acquires in the decades following her death reflects the complex nature of her achievements and the political needs of her Roman conquerors. Octavian, now styling himself Augustus, requires a narrative that justifies his victory while explaining the fierce resistance he encountered. The portrait of Cleopatra that emerges from official Roman sources emphasizes her personal allure while downplaying her political and intellectual capabilities, creating a legend that obscures her real accomplishments. Yet even Roman historians, writing under imperial patronage, cannot entirely suppress evidence of her remarkable abilities. Their accounts, despite their hostile bias, preserve glimpses of the brilliant ruler who mastered multiple languages, revolutionized international diplomacy, and transformed Egypt into the ancient world's most prosperous kingdom. These fragments of truth provide the foundation for later generations to reconstruct a more accurate understanding of her life and reign. The archaeological evidence that emerges over subsequent centuries tells a story that complements and sometimes contradicts the literary sources. Inscriptions throughout Egypt reveal the extent of her building projects and administrative reforms. Papyrus documents preserve records of the economic innovations that brought unprecedented prosperity to her people. Coins bearing her image show a woman whose appearance reflects intelligence and determination rather than mere beauty. The religious traditions she promoted continue to influence spiritual development throughout the Roman Empire and beyond. Her identification with the goddess Isis helps spread Egyptian religious concepts across the Mediterranean world, offering believers a vision of divine feminine wisdom that complements traditional Roman masculine deities. These spiritual innovations eventually contribute to the religious synthesis that characterizes late antiquity. The scientific and technological advances, sponsored by her court, continue to influence human progress long after Alexandria's golden age has ended. Mathematical concepts developed by scholars working under her patronage contribute to advances in engineering and astronomy that benefit subsequent civilizations. Medical knowledge preserved in Alexandrian libraries provides the foundation for later developments in healing and surgery. Geographical information gathered by expeditions she sponsored helps mapmakers create more accurate representations of the known world. The literary and artistic achievements of her reign establish standards of excellence that inspire creators throughout the ancient world and beyond. The poetry, drama, and historical writing produced in Alexandria during her lifetime influences the development of these genres in ways that extend far beyond Egypt's borders. The artistic styles that flourish under her patronage combine Egyptian, Greek, and Roman elements in ways that create new forms of creative expression. Her innovations in governance and administration provide models that later rulers adapt to their own circumstances. The methods she developed for managing a diverse population, maintaining economic prosperity, and conducting international relations influenced the practices of subsequent governments throughout the Mediterranean region. Her approach to combining traditional authority with administrative efficiency becomes part of the standard toolkit for effective rulership. The diplomatic protocols she established continue to shape international relations long after her death. Her innovations in ceremonial practice, treaty negotiation, and cultural exchange provide frameworks that later diplomats adapt to changing circumstances. The emphasis she placed on personal relationships in international affairs influences the conduct of diplomacy throughout the ancient world and beyond. The educational systems she promoted help preserve and transmit knowledge that might otherwise have been lost during the political upheavals that follow her reign. The schools and libraries she established continue to function under Roman rule, maintaining the scholarly traditions that make Alexandria a center of learning for centuries to come. Her commitment to linguistic diversity ensures that important works in multiple languages are preserved for future generations. The trade networks she developed continue to connect distant regions of the world, promoting economic growth and cultural exchange that enriches human civilization. The commercial relationships she established between Egypt and kingdoms in Africa, Asia, and Europe provide foundations for continued prosperity, even under changed political circumstances. Her understanding of economics as a tool for international influence becomes part of the strategic thinking of subsequent rulers. The urban planning and architectural innovations implemented during her reign influenced the development of cities throughout the ancient world. The public works projects she sponsored in Alexandria and other Egyptian cities provide models for combining functionality with aesthetic appeal. Her attention to infrastructure development, from harbour facilities to irrigation systems, demonstrates the connection between good governance and material prosperity. The cultural festivals and celebrations she organised established traditions that continue to bring people together long after her death. These events, which combined religious observance with entertainment and education, provide models for community building that later societies adapt to their own needs. Her understanding of the importance of shared cultural experiences in maintaining social cohesion influences the development of public celebrations throughout the ancient world. The historical documentation she maintained provides invaluable records of ancient life that inform our understanding of the period. Her commitment to preserving knowledge, whether in the form of official chronicles, scientific observations, or artistic achievements, ensures that future generations can learn from the experiences of her time. The archives she established continue to serve scholars and administrators long after her political authority has ended. The international perspective she brought to rulership influences the development of more cosmopolitan approaches to governance throughout the ancient world. Her example demonstrates that effective leadership requires understanding and respecting cultural differences, rather than simply imposing uniform standards. This insight becomes increasingly important as the Roman Empire expands to encompass diverse populations across 3 continents. The maritime innovations she sponsored contribute to advances in navigation and shipbuilding that benefit commerce and exploration for centuries to come. The vessels constructed in Egyptian shipyards under her direction incorporate design features that influence naval architecture throughout the Mediterranean world. Her understanding of sea power as an essential component of national strength becomes part of strategic thinking for subsequent civilizations. As we near the end of our peaceful journey through Cleopatra's remarkable life, let your thoughts drift gently back to that moonlit palace in Alexandria, where our story began. Picture her legacy not as the tragic end of Egyptian independence, but as the beginning of a new chapter in human civilization, one enriched by the innovations, achievements, and vision of the last great pharaoh. The gentle lapping of the Nile against the ancient quays carries with it the whispers of history, reminding us that true greatness lies not in the duration of one's reign, but in the lasting impact of one's achievements. Cleopatra's story continues to inspire leaders, scholars, and dreamers more than 2,000 years after her death, testament to a life lived with extraordinary purpose, intelligence, and dedication to the welfare of her people and the advancement of human civilization. Rest now in the knowledge that her remarkable journey from curious princess to legendary queen offers timeless lessons about the power of education, the importance of cultural understanding, and the enduring impact of visionary leadership. Let the peaceful rhythm of the eternal river carry you into dreams where ancient wisdom still guides those who seek to make the world a better place for all humanity. Tonight, as the stars reflect upon the waters that once carried Cleopatra's royal barges, we find ourselves contemplating the profound ways her extraordinary life continues to shape our understanding of leadership, wisdom, and the delicate art of balancing power with compassion. Let the gentle current of our story carry you deeper into the lasting echoes of her remarkable reign, as we explore how a single lifetime can ripple through the centuries to touch countless generations. In the quiet hours following her death, as Alexandria mourned the loss of its beloved queen, something remarkable began to unfold across the ancient world. The seeds she had planted during her 21 years of rule started to bloom in ways that even her brilliant strategic mind could never have fully anticipated. Picture the scholars in distant libraries, carefully preserving the mathematical treatises and astronomical observations that had flourished under her patronage, knowing that this knowledge would illuminate the path for future generations of thinkers and innovators. The administrative systems she had perfected continued to function with remarkable efficiency even under Roman occupation, demonstrating the depth of her governmental reforms. Tax collectors throughout Egypt still used the streamlined methods she had developed, ensuring that revenues flowed smoothly while minimizing the burden on ordinary citizens. Provincial governors, trained in her diplomatic techniques, maintained stability across the kingdom by respecting local customs while enforcing imperial law with the same cultural sensitivity she had always demonstrated. Her influence on trade and commerce proved equally enduring, as the commercial networks she had established continued to connect distant corners of the ancient world long after her political authority had ended. Merchants sailing the Red Sea still followed the routes she had mapped out to reach the spice markets of India and the gold mines of Ethiopia. Caravans crossing the desert wastes continued to use the watering stations and supply depots she had constructed to facilitate trade between Africa and Asia. These economic arteries, pulsing with the lifeblood of international commerce, ensured that her vision of interconnected prosperity would survive the political upheavals that followed her reign. The linguistic legacy of her extraordinary multilingual abilities created lasting changes in how different cultures communicated with one another throughout the Mediterranean region. The translation projects she had sponsored resulted in important works being preserved in multiple languages, ensuring that knowledge could flow freely between Greek, Roman, Egyptian, and other scholarly traditions. Her personal example of mastering foreign tongues inspired subsequent generations of diplomats and administrators to develop similar linguistic skills, gradually creating a more cosmopolitan and culturally aware governing class throughout the Roman Empire. The architectural innovations pioneered during her reign continued to influence building projects across the ancient world for centuries to come. The fusion of Egyptian, Greek, and Roman design elements that characterized her construction projects established new standards of elegance and functionality that architects throughout the empire sought to emulate. The harbour installations she had commissioned in Alexandria became models for port development from Spain to Syria, while the irrigation systems she had perfected were adapted for use in regions as diverse as North Africa and the Rhine frontier. Her contributions to medical knowledge, preserved in the Great Library and medical schools of Alexandria, provided foundations for healing practices that would benefit humanity for generations. The pharmaceutical research she had sponsored, drawing upon Egypt's vast knowledge of medicinal plants and minerals, resulted in treatments that Roman army surgeons carried to battlefields across 3 continents. The anatomical studies conducted under her patronage, building upon Egypt's ancient expertise in mummification and bodily preservation, advanced understanding of human physiology in ways that influenced medical practice throughout the ancient world. The naval innovations developed in Egyptian shipyards during her reign revolutionized maritime technology throughout the Mediterranean basin. The improved hull designs that allowed her vessels to carry larger cargoes while maintaining superior speed and maneuverability were soon adopted by merchant fleets across the region. The navigational instruments perfected by her admirals enabled more accurate long-distance voyages, opening new trade routes and exploration opportunities that expanded human knowledge of geography and natural science. Her approach to religious tolerance and cultural synthesis became increasingly influential as the Roman Empire grew to encompass ever more diverse populations. The methods she had developed for honoring different spiritual traditions while maintaining social unity provided valuable lessons for administrators struggling to govern multicultural territories. Her personal example of participating respectfully in various religious ceremonies while maintaining her own Egyptian identity demonstrated that effective leadership required understanding and accommodation rather than forced conformity. The educational reforms she had implemented throughout Egypt continued to produce scholars, administrators, and craftsmen whose skills enriched the broader Roman world. The schools she had established, with their emphasis on practical knowledge combined with classical learning, became models for educational institutions throughout the empire. Her insistence on teaching multiple languages and cultural traditions prepared generations of Egyptians to serve effectively in the cosmopolitan environment of imperial administration, while also preserving their own heritage and identity. The agricultural innovations she had sponsored transformed farming practices not only in Egypt but throughout the Roman world, as crops, techniques, and tools developed along the Nile were adapted for use in different climates and soil conditions. The improved irrigation methods she had promoted increased agricultural productivity across North Africa and the Eastern Mediterranean, helping to feed the growing urban populations that characterized the imperial period. Her attention to crop rotation and soil conservation provided sustainable farming practices that maintained agricultural productivity over long periods without depleting natural resources. The diplomatic protocols she had established influenced international relations throughout the ancient world and beyond, as her innovations in ceremonial practice, gift exchange, and treaty negotiation provided frameworks that subsequent civilizations adapted to their own circumstances. Her emphasis on personal relationships in diplomatic affairs, combined with meticulous attention to cultural sensitivities, became standard practice among skilled negotiators throughout the Mediterranean region. The precedents she set for combining formal negotiations with cultural exchange created opportunities for peaceful resolution of conflicts that might otherwise have led to destructive warfare. Her impact on women's roles in society, though limited by the constraints of ancient attitudes, nevertheless provided an inspiring example of female capability in leadership, scholarship, and public administration. The women who served in her court, from scribes and translators to financial administrators and diplomatic representatives, carried their skills and experience into the broader Roman world, gradually expanding opportunities for female participation in public life. Her own example of combining traditional feminine roles with political authority offered a model that influenced attitudes toward women's capabilities throughout the ancient world. The scientific instruments and measurement standards she had promoted in Alexandria influenced technical development across the Roman Empire as Egyptian innovations in astronomy, mathematics, and engineering were adopted by scholars and craftsmen in distant provinces. The precise calendrical calculations developed by her court astronomers improved agricultural planning and commercial scheduling throughout the Mediterranean region. The mathematical techniques pioneered in Alexandrian schools provided tools for architectural and engineering projects that enhanced urban development across the empire. Her preservation of historical records and cultural artifacts ensured that future generations would have access to the accumulated wisdom of ancient civilizations that might otherwise have been lost during periods of political upheaval. The archives she maintained, with their careful documentation of administrative practices, diplomatic correspondence, and scholarly research, provided invaluable resources for later historians and administrators. Her commitment to preserving works in multiple languages and cultural traditions helped maintain the diversity of human knowledge that enriched intellectual development throughout the ancient world. The urban planning principles she had implemented in Alexandria and other Egyptian cities influenced the development of metropolitan areas throughout the Roman Empire, as her innovations in public health, traffic management, and commercial organization were adapted for use in different geographical and cultural contexts. The attention she had paid to providing clean water, efficient waste disposal, and adequate housing for all social classes established standards for urban development that improved living conditions for millions of people across the ancient world. Her innovations in textile production and decorative arts influenced fashion and artistic expression throughout the Mediterranean region, as Egyptian techniques for dyeing, weaving, and metalwork were adopted by craftsmen in distant provinces. The luxury goods produced in workshops under her patronage set standards of quality and aesthetic appeal that influenced consumer preferences across the Roman world. Her personal style, combining traditional Egyptian elements with international influences, established fashion trends that persisted long after her death. The festival traditions and public celebrations she had organized provided models for community building that were adapted by cities throughout the Roman Empire, as administrators recognized the importance of shared cultural experiences in maintaining social cohesion among diverse populations. Her understanding of entertainment as a tool for education and cultural transmission influenced the development of public spectacles and celebrations that combined enjoyment with instruction in civic values and historical traditions. Her contributions to botanical and agricultural science, including the cultivation of new crops and the development of improved farming techniques, enriched the food supply throughout the ancient world, as Egyptian innovations were adapted for use in different climates and growing conditions. The gardens she had maintained in Alexandria, with their careful collection of plants from across the known world, served as botanical laboratories that advanced understanding of plant biology and agricultural potential. These scientific gardens became models for similar institutions throughout the Roman Empire, promoting agricultural diversity and food security. The legal and administrative precedents she had established influenced governmental practices throughout the Roman world, as her innovations in taxation, record-keeping, and judicial procedure were adopted by provincial administrators seeking to improve efficiency and fairness in their territories. Her approach to balancing central authority with local autonomy provided valuable lessons for governing diverse populations across vast territories. The legal codes she had developed, combining Egyptian traditions with Greek and Roman influences, contributed to the evolution of imperial law that would govern the Mediterranean world for centuries. Her patronage of literature and historical writing ensured the preservation of cultural traditions and historical knowledge that enriched intellectual life throughout the ancient world and beyond. The works produced under her sponsorship, including poetry, drama, philosophical treatises, and historical chronicles, provided models of literary excellence that influenced writers and scholars for generations. Her personal example of combining political leadership with intellectual achievement demonstrated that effective governance required both practical skill and broad cultural understanding. The medical schools and hospitals she had established in Alexandria continued to train physicians whose skills served populations throughout the Roman Empire, as Egyptian medical knowledge was combined with Greek theoretical understanding and Roman practical experience. The surgical techniques developed in these institutions, building upon Egypt's ancient expertise in anatomy and healing, advanced medical practice in ways that saved countless lives. The pharmaceutical knowledge preserved in Alexandrian libraries provided the foundation for drug development that continued to benefit humanity long after the fall of the Roman Empire. Her influence on maritime law and commercial regulation provided frameworks for international trade that facilitated economic growth throughout the ancient world, as the legal precedents she had established for resolving disputes, regulating prices, and ensuring fair dealing were adopted by merchants and administrators across the Mediterranean region. Her understanding of economics as a tool for promoting peace and prosperity influenced trade policies that reduce conflicts between different regions and cultural groups. The environmental conservation practices she had promoted in Egypt provided early examples of sustainable resource management that influenced agricultural and industrial development throughout the Roman world. Her attention to preserving soil fertility, managing water resources, and protecting forests demonstrated the connection between environmental stewardship and long-term economic prosperity. These conservation principles, though not always followed by subsequent administrators, established precedents for responsible resource management that would influence environmental thinking in later civilizations. Her innovations in communication and transportation improved the flow of information and goods throughout the ancient world, as the postal systems, road networks, and signaling methods she had developed were adapted for use across the Roman Empire. The efficient communication network she had established enabled more effective coordination between distant territories, improving both military and civilian administration. Her understanding of information as a strategic resource influenced intelligence gathering and diplomatic communication throughout the ancient world. The cultural exchange programs she had promoted between Egypt and other regions created lasting connections between different civilizations that enriched human knowledge and understanding. The scholars, artists, and craftsmen who traveled between Egypt and other parts of the ancient world under her sponsorship carried with them skills, ideas, and perspectives that influenced cultural development across 3 continents. These exchanges created networks of intellectual and artistic collaboration that persisted long after her political authority had ended. Her approach to conflict resolution and peacekeeping provided models for diplomatic intervention that influenced international relations throughout the ancient world and beyond. Her preference for negotiation over warfare, combined with her skill in finding compromise solutions that addressed the legitimate interests of all parties, established precedents for peaceful dispute resolution that were adopted by subsequent civilizations. Her understanding that lasting peace required mutual respect and shared prosperity influenced diplomatic thinking that extended far beyond the ancient Mediterranean. The technological innovations developed under her patronage, from improved metalworking techniques to more efficient agricultural tools, enhanced productivity and living standards throughout the Roman world, as Egyptian innovations were adapted for use in different environments and applications. The engineering projects she had sponsored, including harbour improvements, irrigation systems, and building techniques, provided models for infrastructure development that influenced urban planning and construction across the empire. Her preservation of artistic traditions and support for creative expression ensured that the cultural heritage of Egypt and other ancient civilizations would survive the political upheavals that followed her reign. The paintings, sculptures, musical compositions, and literary works produced under her patronage provided inspiration for artists throughout the ancient world and beyond. Her personal example of combining aesthetic appreciation with practical leadership demonstrated that effective governance required attention to the cultural and spiritual needs of the population, as well as material prosperity. The philosophical schools and intellectual movements she had supported in Alexandria continued to influence thought and scholarship throughout the ancient world, as Egyptian, Greek, and Roman intellectual traditions were synthesized into new forms of understanding. The debates and discussions that flourished under her patronage contributed to the development of philosophical and scientific ideas that would influence human thought for centuries. Her personal participation in these intellectual activities demonstrated that political leadership and scholarly achievement were not only compatible, but mutually reinforcing. As our peaceful journey through Cleopatra's enduring legacy draws toward its gentle conclusion, let your mind rest upon the remarkable truth that a single extraordinary life, lived with wisdom, courage, and dedication to human advancement, can continue to enrich the world for millennia. Her story reminds us that true greatness lies not in conquest or accumulation of wealth, but in the positive changes we create that outlast our own brief time upon this earth. The moonlight dancing on the eternal Nile carries with it the whispers of all those who have been inspired by her example, from ancient scholars preserving knowledge in distant libraries, to modern leaders seeking to bridge cultural divides through understanding and respect. Her legacy flows like the great river itself, nourishing the growth of human civilization wherever its influence reaches, reminding us that the pursuit of knowledge, the embrace of diversity, and the commitment to justice are the foundations upon which lasting achievements are built. Rest now in the peaceful knowledge that Cleopatra's remarkable journey from curious child to visionary queen offers timeless lessons about the power of education, the importance of cultural understanding, and the enduring impact of leadership guided by wisdom and compassion. Let the gentle rhythm of the ancient waters carry you into dreams where the best of human potential continues to flourish, and where the bridges she built between different peoples and cultures still offer pathways toward a more connected and peaceful world. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world holds its breath between night and day, we find ourselves drawn back to contemplate the extraordinary tapestry of achievements that Cleopatra wove during her remarkable lifetime. Let the gentle whispers of history carry you deeper into understanding how this singular woman transformed not just her own kingdom, but the very foundations of civilization itself. Picture her in the final years of her reign, no longer the young princess who had once hidden among scrolls in Alexandria's great library, but a mature ruler whose influence stretched across 3 continents. The palace chambers where she conducted her daily business had become the nerve center of an empire that touched the lives of millions, from the grain farmers along the Nile's fertile banks to the spice merchants navigating the treacherous waters of the Red Sea. Her mornings typically began before sunrise, when the cool desert air still carried the night's tranquility through the palace corridors. While most of her subjects still slept, Cleopatra would already be at work, reviewing reports from provincial governors, studying weather patterns that might affect the harvest, and corresponding with rulers from kingdoms whose names have long since faded from memory. This dedication to the minutiae of governance revealed the true secret of her success, an understanding that great leadership required attention to countless small details that together created prosperity for entire civilizations. The economic transformation she had orchestrated throughout Egypt during her reign stands as perhaps her most lasting practical achievement. When she inherited the throne, Egypt's wealth flowed primarily to Rome through tribute payments and unfavorable trade agreements. Through careful negotiation and strategic planning, she had gradually shifted these arrangements until Egypt once again became the economic powerhouse it had been in ancient times, but now connected to global markets in ways that previous pharaohs could never have imagined. Her innovations in agricultural management demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of both natural cycles and human psychology. Rather than simply demanding increased production from farmers, she invested royal resources in improving irrigation systems, developing new seed varieties, and establishing storage facilities that protected harvests from the uncertainties of weather and political upheaval. These improvements not only increased Egypt's food production, but also provided security for farming families who had lived for generations at the mercy of unpredictable floods and droughts. The craft workshops that flourished under her patronage created goods that were prized throughout the ancient world, from the finest textiles woven with threads of gold and silver, to perfumes that captured the essence of exotic flowers in small alabaster containers. Egyptian artisans working under her direction developed new techniques for glassmaking, metalworking, and jewelry creation that influenced artistic production across the Mediterranean region. These workshops provided employment for thousands of skilled workers, while establishing Egypt's reputation for luxury goods that commanded premium prices in international markets. Her naval achievements extended far beyond the warships that fought at Actium, encompassing a complete transformation of Egypt's maritime capabilities. The merchant vessels constructed in her shipyards could carry larger cargoes over greater distances than any previous Egyptian ships, opening new trade routes that connected the Nile Valley with markets in India, Ethiopia, and the distant kingdoms of the Arabian Peninsula. These commercial expeditions brought back not only exotic goods, but also knowledge of navigation, shipbuilding techniques, and foreign customs that enriched Egyptian culture and understanding. The diplomatic corps she assembled represented one of the ancient world's most sophisticated intelligence networks, with representatives stationed in courts from Britain to Persia. These ambassadors were more than mere message carriers. They were skilled observers who provided detailed reports on political developments, economic conditions, and cultural trends that might affect Egypt's interests. Their information allowed Cleopatra to anticipate changes in international relations and position Egypt advantageously before other rulers even recognized that circumstances were shifting. Her contributions to medical knowledge built upon Egypt's ancient expertise while incorporating new discoveries from Greek and Roman physicians. The hospitals she established in Alexandria and other major cities became centers for medical education that attracted students from across the known world. Egyptian doctors trained in these institutions carried their skills throughout the Roman Empire, while also preserving traditional healing practices that might otherwise have been lost during periods of political upheaval. The library expansion projects she sponsored transformed Alexandria into an even greater center of learning than it had been under her predecessors. New wings were constructed to house growing collections of scrolls from every known civilization, while improved copying techniques ensured that important works were preserved in multiple versions. The scholars who worked in these facilities made breakthrough discoveries in mathematics, astronomy, geography, and natural philosophy that advanced human understanding in ways that continued to influence scientific development for centuries. Her legal reforms demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of justice that balanced traditional Egyptian practices with the practical needs of governing a diverse population. The court systems she established provided fair hearings for citizens regardless of their ethnic background or social status, while also maintaining the ceremonial aspects of royal authority that legitimized her rule in the eyes of conservative nobles. These legal innovations created frameworks for dispute resolution that were later adopted throughout the Roman Empire. The public works projects undertaken during her reign transformed Egyptian cities into models of urban planning that influenced architectural development across the ancient world. New aqueducts brought fresh water to previously underserved neighborhoods, while improved sewage systems enhanced public health in ways that reduced disease and increased life expectancy. The parks and public spaces she created provided venues for community gatherings that strengthened social bonds among Egypt's diverse population. Her patronage of the arts created a cultural flowering that produced works of lasting beauty and significance. The painters, sculptors, musicians, and poets who worked under her sponsorship developed new styles that combined Egyptian traditions with international influences, creating artistic expressions that captured the cosmopolitan spirit of her reign. These cultural achievements provided inspiration for creative works throughout the ancient world, while also preserving Egyptian artistic traditions for future generations. The educational initiatives she promoted extended learning opportunities far beyond the elite circles that had traditionally monopolized knowledge in ancient societies. Schools established in provincial towns brought literacy and numeracy to populations that had previously been excluded from formal education, while also preserving local languages and customs that might otherwise have disappeared under the pressure of cultural homogenization. These educational programs created a more informed and capable citizenry that could participate effectively in the complex society she was creating. Her environmental conservation efforts demonstrated an early understanding of sustainable resource management that was remarkably advanced for her time. Regulations she established protected forests from excessive logging, while careful management of water resources ensured that irrigation systems could function effectively without depleting the sources that fed them. Her attention to soil conservation prevented the kind of agricultural degradation that had damaged other ancient civilizations, maintaining Egypt's productivity for generations beyond her own lifetime. The transportation networks she developed connected previously isolated regions of Egypt while also linking the kingdom more effectively with international trade routes. New roads facilitated the movement of goods and people throughout the country, while improved harbour facilities made Egyptian ports more attractive to foreign merchants. These infrastructure investments created economic opportunities in rural areas, while also strengthening Egypt's position as a crucial link between different regions of the ancient world. Her innovations in manufacturing and industry established Egypt as a producer of high-quality goods that competed successfully in international markets. The textile factories she sponsored developed new dyeing techniques that created colours of unprecedented brilliance and permanence, while metalworking facilities produced tools and weapons that were prized for their superior craftsmanship. These industrial developments provided employment for urban populations, while also generating export revenues that supported her other governmental initiatives. The scientific expeditions she sponsored expanded human knowledge of geography, natural history, and astronomy in ways that influenced scholarly understanding throughout the ancient world. Egyptian explorers working under her direction mapped previously unknown regions of Africa and Arabia, while also making astronomical observations that improved navigation and calendar systems. The botanical specimens they collected enriched gardens and agricultural development across the Mediterranean region. Her religious policies demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of spirituality as both personal experience and social institution. While maintaining her own devotion to traditional Egyptian deities, she also supported the religious practices of other communities within her kingdom, creating an atmosphere of tolerance that reduced conflicts between different ethnic and cultural groups. This approach to religious diversity became a model for later rulers governing multicultural populations. The festival traditions she established brought together people from different backgrounds in celebrations that strengthened social cohesion, while also providing economic benefits to merchants, craftsmen, and entertainers. These public events combined religious observance with entertainment and education, creating shared experiences that helped forge a common Egyptian identity among the kingdom's diverse population. The traditions she established continued to bring communities together long after her political authority had ended. Her contributions to women's status in society, while constrained by ancient attitudes, nevertheless provided examples of female capability that influenced attitudes toward women's roles throughout the Roman world. The women who served in her administration demonstrated competence in fields traditionally reserved for men, while her own example of combining traditional feminine roles with political authority offered a model that inspired subsequent generations of women seeking greater participation in public life. The commercial codes she established provided frameworks for international trade that reduced conflicts between merchants from different cultures, while also ensuring fair treatment for Egyptian traders in foreign markets. These regulations created standards for weights, measures, and currency exchange that facilitated commerce throughout the Eastern Mediterranean, while also protecting consumers from fraud and exploitation. Her understanding of economics as a tool for promoting peaceful relations influenced trade policies throughout the ancient world. The architectural innovations pioneered during her reign influenced building techniques and aesthetic standards throughout the Roman Empire, as Egyptian design elements were incorporated into structures from Britain to Syria. The fusion of different cultural traditions that characterized her construction projects created new forms of artistic expression that reflected the cosmopolitan nature of her kingdom. These architectural achievements provided models for urban development that enhanced living conditions in cities across the ancient world. Her preservation of historical records ensured that the experiences and achievements of her reign would be available to future generations of scholars and administrators. The archives she maintained documented not only official governmental activities, but also the daily life of ordinary Egyptians, providing invaluable insights into ancient society that continue to inform our understanding of the period. Her commitment to historical documentation influenced record-keeping practices throughout the Roman Empire. The agricultural innovations she promoted increased food production while also improving the nutritional quality of the Egyptian diet through the cultivation of new crops and the development of improved food preservation techniques. These advances in agricultural science helped support larger urban populations while also providing surplus production for export to other regions. The farming methods she developed influenced agricultural practices throughout North Africa and the Eastern Mediterranean. The medical schools she established trained physicians whose skills served populations throughout the ancient world, as Egyptian medical knowledge was combined with discoveries from other cultures. The surgical techniques developed in these institutions, building upon Egypt's ancient expertise in anatomy, advanced medical practice in ways that saved countless lives. The pharmaceutical research conducted under her patronage led to new treatments for diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Her innovations in communication technology improved the flow of information throughout her kingdom and beyond, as new methods for rapid message transmission were developed and implemented. The postal system she established enabled more efficient coordination between distant territories, while also facilitating commercial correspondence that supported international trade. These communication networks became models for information management throughout the Roman Empire. The cultural exchange programs she promoted between Egypt and other civilizations created lasting connections that enriched human understanding and knowledge. Scholars, artists, and craftsmen who traveled between different regions under her sponsorship carried with them skills, ideas, and perspectives that influenced cultural development across 3 continents. These exchanges created networks of intellectual collaboration that persisted long after political circumstances had changed. Her approach to conflict resolution emphasized negotiation and compromise over military force, establishing precedents for peaceful dispute resolution that influenced diplomatic practice throughout the ancient world. Her success in maintaining Egypt's independence through skillful diplomacy rather than constant warfare demonstrated that intelligent leadership could achieve more lasting results than mere military strength. This understanding of diplomacy as an alternative to violence influenced international relations for centuries. The technological developments sponsored by her court advanced human capabilities in fields ranging from engineering and architecture to navigation and manufacturing. Egyptian innovations in these areas were adopted throughout the Roman Empire, improving productivity and living standards for millions of people. Her understanding of technology as a tool for enhancing human welfare influenced approaches to scientific research and development that extended far beyond her own lifetime. As we approach the gentle conclusion of our peaceful journey through Cleopatra's extraordinary achievements, let your thoughts rest upon the remarkable truth that her life's work created positive changes that continued to benefit humanity long after her reign had ended. The innovations she pioneered, the institutions she established, and the precedents she set provided foundations for progress that influenced the development of civilization itself. The soft murmur of the eternal Nile carries with it the gratitude of countless generations who benefited from her wisdom, vision, and dedication to human advancement. Her story reminds us that true greatness lies not in the accumulation of power for its own sake, but in using whatever authority we possess to create lasting improvements in the lives of others. The bridges she built between different cultures, the knowledge she preserved and expanded, and the prosperity she created continue to enrich our world more than 2 millennia after her death. Rest now in the peaceful understanding that Cleopatra's remarkable legacy offers timeless inspiration for anyone seeking to make a positive difference in the world. Her example demonstrates that with sufficient dedication, intelligence, and compassion, a single lifetime can create changes that echo through the centuries, touching countless lives and helping to guide humanity toward a more enlightened and connected future. Let the gentle rhythm of the ancient waters carry you into dreams where her vision of peace, prosperity, and understanding between all peoples continues to flourish and grow. Tonight, As we drift deeper into the gentle embrace of history's most captivating tale, let us explore the profound ways Cleopatra's extraordinary mind shaped not just her own era, but the very foundations of knowledge that continue to illuminate our world today. Picture her in the quiet hours before dawn, surrounded by the soft glow of oil lamps as she worked through complex mathematical calculations that would revolutionize trade across 3 continents. Her intellectual curiosity knew no boundaries, extending into realms that most rulers of her time never dared to explore. While other monarchs concerned themselves solely with military conquests and palace intrigues, Cleopatra delved deep into the mysteries of astronomy, spending countless nights on the palace rooftops with her scholarly advisors, mapping the movements of stars and planets with a precision that astounded even the learned astronomers of Rhodes and Athens. These celestial observations weren't mere academic exercises. They formed the backbone of a navigation system that allowed Egyptian ships to traverse previously uncharted waters, opening trade routes that connected the Nile Valley with the farthest reaches of the known world. The mathematical innovations that emerged from her court represented a synthesis of Egyptian, Greek, and Babylonian numerical systems that created new possibilities for architectural engineering and commercial calculation. Picture the royal scribes working by lamplight, developing accounting methods so sophisticated that they could track the movement of goods across vast distances, calculate compound interest on loans that spanned multiple growing seasons, and determine optimal tax rates that maximized royal revenues while maintaining popular support. These computational advances enabled Egypt to manage an economy of unprecedented complexity, coordinating agricultural production, manufacturing output, and international trade in ways that previous civilizations had never achieved. Her fascination with natural philosophy led to groundbreaking discoveries in chemistry and metallurgy that transformed Egyptian manufacturing capabilities. The workshops she established in Alexandria became laboratories where craftsmen experimented with new alloys, developing bronze formulations that produced stronger weapons and more durable tools. Her personal involvement in these technical pursuits reflected a hands-on approach to leadership that distinguished her from rulers who remained isolated in their palaces, removed from the practical realities of governing a complex society. The agricultural research she sponsored represented perhaps her most far-reaching contribution to human welfare, as Egyptian farmers working under her direction developed new cultivation techniques that increased crop yields while preserving soil fertility for future generations. These innovations weren't limited to grain production. Her agricultural specialists successfully introduced crops from distant lands, creating botanical gardens that served as living libraries of plant knowledge. Spices from India, fruits from Persia, and medicinal herbs from Ethiopia were carefully cultivated along the Nile, providing Egyptians with more varied diets, while also creating new sources of export revenue. Her understanding of hydraulic engineering enabled the construction of irrigation systems so advanced that they continued to function effectively for centuries after her death. These projects weren't simply matters of moving water from one place to another. They represented sophisticated understanding of water pressure, flow dynamics, and seasonal variation that allowed Egyptian agriculture to achieve levels of productivity that supported urban populations of unprecedented size. The engineering principles she helped develop influenced construction projects throughout the Roman Empire, from the aqueducts that supplied Rome itself to the harbour installations that facilitated maritime commerce across the Mediterranean. The linguistic scholarship that flourished under her patronage created the ancient world's most comprehensive understanding of cross-cultural communication, as teams of translators working in the Great Library developed dictionaries and grammatical guides that enabled precise translation between languages that had never before been systematically compared. These scholarly projects weren't merely academic exercises. They provided practical tools that facilitated diplomatic negotiations, commercial agreements, and cultural exchange on an international scale. The translation techniques developed in Alexandria influenced the preservation and transmission of knowledge throughout the ancient world, ensuring that important ideas could cross linguistic barriers that had previously isolated different civilizations. Her contributions to medical knowledge built upon Egypt's ancient expertise in anatomy and healing, while incorporating new discoveries from physicians trained in different traditions. The medical schools she established became centers for research that advanced understanding of human physiology, surgical techniques, and pharmaceutical preparation in ways that saved countless lives throughout the ancient world. Egyptian doctors trained in these institutions carried their knowledge to the farthest corners of the Roman Empire, while also preserving traditional healing practices that might otherwise have been lost during periods of political upheaval. The geographical expeditions she sponsored expanded human knowledge of the world's physical features and natural resources, as Egyptian explorers working under her direction ventured into previously unknown regions of Africa, Arabia, and the Indian Ocean. These voyages of discovery weren't motivated solely by commercial interests. They reflected genuine scientific curiosity about the natural world and its diverse inhabitants. The maps and chronicles produced by these expeditions provided invaluable information for subsequent generations of traders, diplomats, and scholars, while also demonstrating that systematic exploration could yield both practical benefits and intellectual satisfaction. Her innovations in urban planning created cities that balanced functionality with aesthetic beauty, providing models for metropolitan development that influenced architectural thinking throughout the ancient world. The public spaces she designed in Alexandria and other Egyptian cities combined practical considerations like traffic flow and waste management with artistic elements that enhanced the daily experience of urban life. These planning principles recognized that effective governance required attention to both material needs and spiritual well-being, creating environments that supported human flourishing in all its dimensions. The festival traditions she established demonstrated sophisticated understanding of community psychology, as these celebrations combined religious observance with entertainment, education, and commercial activity in ways that strengthened social bonds, while also providing economic benefits to participants. Her festivals weren't merely occasions for popular amusement. They served as vehicles for cultural transmission, diplomatic display, and economic stimulation that enhanced Egypt's prosperity and international reputation. The precedents she established influenced public celebrations throughout the Roman Empire, creating traditions that helped diverse populations develop shared identities and common loyalties. Her approach to legal administration balanced traditional Egyptian practices with innovative procedures that addressed the needs of an increasingly diverse and complex society. The court systems she established provided fair hearings for citizens regardless of their ethnic background or social status, while also maintaining the ceremonial aspects of royal authority that legitimized her rule in the eyes of conservative nobles. These legal innovations created frameworks for dispute resolution that protected individual rights, while also preserving social stability, establishing precedents that influenced judicial practices throughout the ancient world. The commercial regulations she developed provided frameworks for international trade that reduced conflicts between merchants from different cultures while ensuring fair treatment for all participants in the marketplace. Her understanding of economics as a tool for promoting peaceful relations led to trade agreements that created mutual benefits for all parties, demonstrating that commercial cooperation could achieve more lasting results than military conquest. These economic policies influenced commercial practices throughout the Mediterranean region, creating standards for business conduct that promoted prosperity and reduced international tensions. Her preservation of historical records ensured that the achievements and experiences of her reign would be available to future generations of scholars and administrators, as the archives she maintained documented not only official governmental activities, but also the daily lives of ordinary Egyptians. This commitment to historical documentation reflected her understanding that effective leadership required learning from past experiences, while also ensuring that contemporary innovations would be preserved for future reference. The record-keeping systems she established influenced governmental administration throughout the Roman Empire, creating standards for documentation that enhanced administrative efficiency and accountability. The environmental conservation measures she implemented demonstrated remarkably advanced understanding of sustainable resource management, as regulations she established protected forests from excessive exploitation, while careful water management ensured that irrigation systems could function effectively without depleting their sources. Her attention to soil conservation prevented the kind of agricultural degradation that had damaged other ancient civilizations, maintaining Egypt's productivity for generations beyond her own lifetime. These conservation principles established precedents for responsible resource stewardship that influenced environmental thinking in subsequent civilizations. The technological innovations developed under her patronage advanced human capabilities in fields ranging from metallurgy and engineering to navigation and manufacturing, as Egyptian craftsmen working with royal support created new tools, techniques, and processes that enhanced productivity and quality throughout the kingdom. Her understanding of technology as a tool for improving human welfare led to innovations that were adopted throughout the Roman Empire, enhancing living standards for millions of people, while also demonstrating that systematic research and development could yield practical benefits for entire societies. The educational initiatives she promoted extended learning opportunities far beyond the traditional elite circles, creating schools in provincial towns that brought literacy and mathematical skills to populations that had previously been excluded from formal education. These programs weren't simply matters of basic instruction. They preserved local languages and customs, while also providing students with the skills needed to participate effectively in Egypt's increasingly complex society. The educational methods she developed influenced teaching practices throughout the ancient world, creating precedents for public education that recognized learning as both individual right and social necessity. Her contributions to philosophical understanding emerged from the scholarly discussions that flourished in her court, where thinkers from different cultural traditions exchanged ideas about ethics, politics, and the nature of human existence. These intellectual exchanges weren't merely academic debates. They addressed practical questions about how societies could be organized to promote justice, prosperity, and human flourishing. The philosophical insights that emerged from these discussions influenced political thinking throughout the ancient world, providing frameworks for governance that balanced individual liberty with collective welfare. The artistic achievements sponsored by her patronage created new forms of creative expression that combined Egyptian traditions with international influences, producing works of lasting beauty that captured the cosmopolitan spirit of her reign. The painters, sculptors, musicians, and poets who worked under her direction developed innovative techniques and styles that influenced artistic development across the Mediterranean region. These cultural achievements provided inspiration for creative works throughout the ancient world, while also preserving Egyptian artistic traditions that might otherwise have been lost during periods of political upheaval. Her innovations in communication technology improved the flow of information throughout her kingdom and beyond, as new methods for message transmission enabled more efficient coordination between distant territories, while also facilitating the commercial correspondence that supported international trade. The postal systems she established became models for information management that were adopted throughout the Roman Empire, creating networks that enhanced both governmental administration and private communication. Her understanding of information as a strategic resource influenced intelligence gathering and diplomatic communication practices that extended far beyond her own lifetime. The industrial developments she promoted established Egypt as a producer of high-quality manufactured goods that competed successfully in international markets, as workshops operating under royal patronage developed new techniques for textile production, metalworking, and craftsmanship that created products prized throughout the ancient world. These manufacturing innovations provided employment for urban populations, while also generating export revenues that supported her other governmental initiatives. The industrial methods she pioneered influenced production techniques throughout the Roman Empire, enhancing both economic productivity and product quality. The transportation network she developed connected previously isolated regions of Egypt while also linking the kingdom more effectively with international trade routes, as new roads and improved harbour facilities made it easier for goods and people to move throughout the country and beyond. These infrastructure investments created economic opportunities in rural areas, while also strengthening Egypt's position as a crucial link between different regions of the ancient world. The transportation system she established continued to facilitate commerce and communication long after her political authority had ended. The scientific instruments and measurement standards she promoted in Alexandria influenced technical development across the Roman Empire, as Egyptian innovations in astronomy, mathematics, and engineering were adopted by scholars and craftsmen in distant provinces. The precise calendrical calculations developed by her court astronomers improved agricultural planning and commercial scheduling throughout the Mediterranean region, while the mathematical techniques pioneered in Alexandrian schools provided tools for architectural and engineering projects that enhanced urban development across the empire. Her diplomatic achievements extended far beyond the famous relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, encompassing a comprehensive network of international alliances that positioned Egypt as a major power in ancient geopolitics. The treaties she negotiated with rulers throughout the known world created frameworks for peaceful cooperation that promoted trade, cultural exchange, and mutual security. Her diplomatic innovations influenced international relations throughout the ancient world, establishing precedents for negotiation and treaty-making that were adopted by subsequent civilizations. The naval innovations developed under her direction revolutionized maritime technology throughout the Mediterranean basin, as Egyptian shipbuilders, working with royal support, created vessels that incorporated improved hull designs, navigation equipment, and cargo capacity that enhanced both military and commercial capabilities. These technological advances enabled more efficient transportation of goods and people across vast distances, opening new possibilities for trade and exploration that expanded human knowledge of geography and natural resources. Her contributions to women's roles in society, while constrained by ancient attitudes, nevertheless provided examples of female capability that influenced perceptions of women's potential throughout the Roman world. The women who served in her administration demonstrated competence in fields traditionally reserved for men, while her own example of combining traditional feminine roles with political authority offered a model that inspired subsequent generations. Her legacy in this regard helped create gradual changes in attitudes toward women's participation in public life that persisted long after her reign had ended. The religious policies she implemented demonstrated sophisticated understanding of spirituality as both personal experience and social institution, creating an atmosphere of tolerance that reduced conflicts between different ethnic and cultural groups within her kingdom. Her approach to religious diversity became a model for later rulers governing multicultural populations, showing that respect for different spiritual traditions could strengthen rather than weaken social unity. The religious innovations she promoted influenced spiritual development throughout the ancient world, contributing to the gradual evolution of more inclusive and cosmopolitan forms of worship. The cultural synthesis she achieved between Egyptian, Greek, and Roman traditions created new forms of civilization that combined the best elements of different societies while preserving the distinctive characteristics that made each culture valuable. This synthetic approach to cultural development influenced the evolution of Roman civilization itself, as Egyptian influences gradually transformed imperial culture in ways that enhanced its sophistication and appeal. Her example demonstrated that cultural diversity could be a source of strength rather than division, providing models for multicultural societies that extended far beyond the ancient world. The economic policies she implemented created unprecedented prosperity for all levels of Egyptian society, as her reforms in taxation, trade regulation, and resource management ensured that the benefits of economic growth were shared broadly rather than concentrated among elites. Her understanding of economics as a tool for promoting social stability led to policies that reduced inequality while also encouraging individual initiative and entrepreneurship. These economic innovations influenced governmental approaches to managing prosperity throughout the Roman Empire, creating precedents for policies that balanced private enterprise with public welfare. As we near the peaceful conclusion of our gentle journey through Cleopatra's remarkable achievements, let your thoughts rest upon the extraordinary truth that her life's work created positive changes that continued to enrich human civilization long after her reign had ended. The innovations she pioneered in fields ranging from science and technology to diplomacy and governance provided foundations for progress that influenced the development of knowledge and culture throughout subsequent centuries. The soft whisper of the eternal Nile carries with it the gratitude of countless generations who benefited from her wisdom, vision, and dedication to human advancement. Her story demonstrates that true greatness lies not in the mere exercise of power, but in using whatever authority we possess to create lasting improvements in the lives of others and the advancement of human understanding. The knowledge she preserved and expanded, the institutions she established, and the precedents she set continue to influence our world, more than 2 millennia after her extraordinary life came to its end. Rest now in the peaceful understanding that Cleopatra's remarkable legacy offers timeless inspiration for anyone seeking to make a positive difference in the world through the pursuit of knowledge, the embrace of diversity, and the commitment to justice and prosperity for all people. Her example shows us that with sufficient dedication, intelligence, and compassion, a single extraordinary life can create changes that echo through the centuries, touching countless lives and helping to guide humanity toward a more enlightened and connected future. Let the gentle rhythm of the ancient waters carry you into dreams where her vision of learning, understanding, and cooperation between all peoples continues to flourish and inspire new generations of leaders, scholars, and dreamers who seek to build upon the magnificent foundations she laid so long ago. In the hushed twilight of our journey together, as the ancient stars begin to fade into the gentle embrace of dawn, we find ourselves contemplating the most profound mystery of Cleopatra's extraordinary existence. How does a single life, however brilliant, transcend the boundaries of mortality to become something eternal, something that continues to whisper wisdom across the vast expanse of centuries? Picture her now in those final moments of conscious thought, as the venom coursed through her veins and the weight of 3 millennia of Egyptian civilization rested upon her closing eyes. Even then, facing the ultimate defeat, her mind remained sharp as the finest Damascus steel, calculating not just her own fate, but the preservation of everything she had built and cherished. The arrangements she made in those last precious hours reveal a woman who understood that true victory lies not in avoiding death, but in ensuring that one's life's work outlives the fragile vessel that contained it. The immediate aftermath of her passing created ripples that spread across the ancient world like stones cast into still water. In Alexandria's great library, scribes worked through the night by flickering lamplight, carefully copying her personal correspondence, her governmental reforms, and her scientific observations before Roman administrators could decide which documents deserved preservation and which should be consigned to flames. These dedicated scholars understood that they were not merely preserving papers, but safeguarding the accumulated wisdom of a ruler whose intellectual curiosity had touched every aspect of human knowledge. The merchants who had prospered under her trade policies found themselves carrying more than exotic goods along the ancient routes that connected Africa with Asia and Europe. They carried stories, techniques, and innovations that had flourished in Egypt during her golden reign. A spice trader sailing toward Rome might share with his passengers the agricultural methods that had increased crop yields along the Nile. A textile merchant crossing the desert wastes could describe the dyeing techniques that had made Egyptian fabrics the most prized in the known world. Through these countless small exchanges, her influence spread like seeds on the wind, taking root in distant soils where her name might never even be spoken. The women who had served in her administration faced uncertain futures as Roman rule transformed Egypt's governmental structure. Yet they carried within themselves proof that female intellect could match any challenge that leadership might present. Some found positions as tutors in wealthy Roman households, where they quietly demonstrated that women could master mathematics, languages, and diplomatic protocols with the same facility as their male counterparts. Others established schools in provincial towns, creating educational opportunities for girls who might otherwise never have learned to read or write. Through their example and dedication, the precedent she had set for women's capabilities continued to influence attitudes and opportunities across the Mediterranean world. The physicians trained in her medical schools dispersed throughout the Roman Empire, carrying with them treatments and surgical techniques that had been refined in Alexandria's hospitals and research centers. A doctor serving with the legions on the Germanic frontier might use pharmaceutical knowledge developed along the Nile to treat wounded soldiers thousands of miles from Egypt. A midwife in Gaul could apply obstetric techniques learned from Egyptian practitioners to save mothers and children who would otherwise have perished in childbirth. These medical innovations, spreading through the networks of professional practice and personal training, saved countless lives while demonstrating the practical benefits of systematic scientific research. The agricultural specialists who had worked closely with her on irrigation projects and crop development found their expertise valued throughout the empire as Roman administrators recognized the connection between productive farming and political stability. The techniques they had perfected for managing seasonal flooding were adapted for use in river valleys from Spain to Syria. The crop rotation methods they had developed to maintain soil fertility influenced farming practices across North Africa and Southern Europe. Through their knowledge and dedication, the agricultural innovations of her reign continued to feed growing populations long after Egypt itself had become just another Roman province. The architects and engineers who had designed her construction projects carried their knowledge to building sites across the expanding empire, where Egyptian innovations in structural design, water management, and urban planning enhanced the quality of life in cities from Britain to Mesopotamia. The harbour installations that had made Alexandria one of the ancient world's greatest ports became models for maritime infrastructure throughout the Mediterranean. The public buildings that had graced Egyptian cities influenced architectural styles that combined functionality with aesthetic beauty in ways that enhanced both practical utility and civic pride. Her innovations in diplomatic protocol and international negotiation became part of the standard practices that Roman administrators adopted when dealing with foreign rulers and diverse populations. The translation services she had developed to facilitate communication between different cultures provided frameworks for linguistic cooperation that helped the empire govern its multicultural territories more effectively. The ceremonial traditions she had established for receiving foreign dignitaries influenced imperial court practices that demonstrated Rome's power while also showing respect for other civilizations and their customs. The commercial networks she had established continued to function under Roman administration, connecting distant regions in trade relationships that promoted prosperity and cultural exchange throughout the ancient world. The banking systems she had developed to facilitate long-distance commerce provided models for financial institutions that supported economic growth across the empire. The quality standards she had established for Egyptian manufactured goods influenced production techniques that enhanced both product reliability and consumer confidence in markets from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean. The naval innovations pioneered in her shipyards influenced maritime technology throughout the Roman world, as her designs for improved hull construction, sail configuration, and cargo capacity were adopted by builders working in harbors from the Black Sea to the Atlantic coast. The navigation techniques developed by her admirals enabled more accurate long-distance voyages that opened new trade routes and exploration opportunities. The maritime legal codes she had established for resolving disputes and regulating commerce provided frameworks for international shipping that reduced conflicts and promoted peaceful cooperation between merchants from different regions. The scientific instruments and measurement standards developed in Alexandria during her reign influenced technical development across the Roman Empire, as Egyptian innovations in astronomy, mathematics, and engineering were adopted by scholars and craftsmen throughout the Mediterranean world. The calendrical calculations perfected by her court astronomers improved agricultural planning and religious observances in regions far from the Nile Valley. The mathematical techniques pioneered in Alexandrian schools provided tools for architectural projects, military engineering, and commercial accounting that enhanced both governmental efficiency and private enterprise. The preservation of historical records and cultural artifacts that she had mandated ensured that future generations would have access to the accumulated wisdom of ancient civilizations that might otherwise have been lost during periods of political upheaval. The archives she maintained provided invaluable resources for later historians, administrators, and scholars who sought to understand the complexities of governing diverse populations across vast territories. Her commitment to documenting contemporary events and preserving ancient knowledge influenced record-keeping practices throughout the Roman world, creating standards for historical documentation that enhanced both governmental accountability and scholarly research. The educational methods she had developed continued to influence teaching practices throughout the ancient world, as the schools she had established provided models for instruction that combined practical skills with cultural literacy. The emphasis she had placed on multilingual education created generations of administrators, merchants, and scholars who could communicate effectively across cultural boundaries. The libraries she had expanded continued to serve as centers of learning that attracted students from across the known world, preserving and transmitting knowledge that enriched human understanding for centuries to come. The festival traditions and public celebrations she had organized provided models for community building that were adapted by cities throughout the Roman Empire, as administrators recognized the importance of shared cultural experiences in maintaining social cohesion among diverse populations. Her understanding of entertainment as a vehicle for education and cultural transmission influenced the development of public spectacles that combined enjoyment with instruction in civic values and historical traditions. These festival innovations created traditions that brought communities together, while also providing economic benefits to merchants, craftsmen, and performers. The environmental conservation measures she had implemented demonstrated principles of sustainable resource management that influenced land use policies throughout the Roman world, as administrators recognized the connection between environmental stewardship and long-term economic prosperity. The forestry regulations she had established protected timber resources that were essential for construction and shipbuilding. The water management systems she had developed ensured that irrigation could continue to support agricultural productivity without depleting the sources that fed it. These conservation principles provided early examples of responsible resource stewardship that influenced environmental thinking in subsequent civilizations. The technological innovations developed under her patronage continued to advance human capabilities long after her death, as Egyptian techniques for metalworking, textile production, and manufacturing were adopted throughout the Roman Empire. The improved tools and processes developed in her workshops enhanced productivity and quality in industries ranging from agriculture to construction. The engineering solutions pioneered by her technical specialists influenced infrastructure development that improved transportation, communication, and urban services across the ancient world. The philosophical discussions that had flourished in her court continued to influence intellectual development throughout the Mediterranean region, as the ideas explored in Alexandria spread to other centers of learning and contemplation. The ethical frameworks developed through these scholarly exchanges provided guidance for leaders facing complex moral and political challenges. The questions raised about justice, governance, and human nature continued to engage thinkers who sought to understand the foundations of civilized society and effective leadership. The artistic achievements sponsored by her patronage established aesthetic standards and creative techniques that influenced cultural development across the Roman Empire, as Egyptian innovations in painting, sculpture, music, and literature were adopted and adapted by artists working in different regions and traditions. The fusion of cultural elements that characterized her artistic programs provided models for creative synthesis that enhanced both individual expression and collective cultural identity. These artistic innovations created new forms of beauty that enriched human experience while also preserving traditional elements that connected contemporary society with its historical roots. The industrial methods she had promoted continued to influence manufacturing throughout the ancient world, as the workshops established under her direction provided training and employment that enhanced both individual prosperity and collective economic strength. The quality control systems she had developed ensured that Egyptian products maintained their reputation for excellence in international markets. The production techniques pioneered in her facilities influenced industrial development that improved both the efficiency of manufacturing processes and the quality of finished goods. The transportation systems she had developed continued to facilitate movement of people and goods long after her political authority had ended, as the roads, harbours, and communication networks she had established provided infrastructure that supported commerce and administration throughout the Eastern Mediterranean. The engineering standards she had established for construction projects influenced the development of similar facilities across the Roman Empire. The maintenance procedures she had implemented ensured that these transportation systems could continue to function effectively under changing political circumstances. The diplomatic relationships she had cultivated with rulers throughout the known world created networks of international cooperation that persisted even after Egypt's incorporation into the Roman Empire. The treaties she had negotiated provided frameworks for peaceful interaction that reduced conflicts and promoted mutual prosperity. The cultural exchanges she had sponsored created lasting connections between different civilizations that enriched human understanding and knowledge. These diplomatic innovations influenced international relations throughout the ancient world, establishing precedents for negotiation and cooperation that were adopted by subsequent generations of leaders. The legal precedents she had established influenced judicial practices throughout the Roman world, as her innovations in court procedure, evidence evaluation, and dispute resolution provided models for fair and efficient administration of justice. The legal codes she had developed combined traditional practices with innovative solutions that addressed the needs of increasingly complex and diverse societies. These judicial innovations created frameworks for protecting individual rights while maintaining social order, establishing principles that influenced legal development for centuries to come. The commercial regulations she had implemented provided standards for business conduct that promoted fair dealing and reduced conflicts in international trade, as merchants throughout the Mediterranean region adopted the practices she had established for contract negotiation, quality assurance, and dispute resolution. Her understanding of economics as a tool for promoting peaceful cooperation influenced trade policies that created mutual benefits for all participants in commercial relationships. These economic innovations established precedents for business practices that enhanced both individual prosperity and collective economic stability. The urban planning principles she had developed influenced city design throughout the Roman Empire, as her innovations in traffic management, public health, and community services were adopted by administrators seeking to improve living conditions in metropolitan areas. The attention she had paid to creating public spaces that served both practical and aesthetic purposes influenced architectural development that enhanced the quality of urban life. These planning innovations created models for city development that balanced individual needs with collective welfare, while also demonstrating the connection between effective governance and material prosperity. The scientific research she had sponsored continued to advance human knowledge long after her death, as the discoveries made in Alexandria during her reign provided foundations for further investigation and understanding. The astronomical observations conducted under her patronage improved navigation and timekeeping throughout the ancient world. The medical research carried out in her hospitals and schools advanced understanding of human health and disease treatment. The mathematical investigations pursued in her academies developed new techniques for calculation and measurement that enhanced both theoretical knowledge and practical application. The cultural preservation efforts she had undertaken ensured that the wisdom and achievements of ancient civilizations would survive the political changes that followed her reign. The languages she had helped to preserve continued to be spoken and written long after other rulers might have allowed them to disappear. The artistic traditions she had supported provided continuity that connected later generations with their cultural heritage. The historical records she had maintained offered valuable insights into ancient life that informed understanding and decision-making for centuries to come. The religious tolerance she had practiced provided models for governing diverse populations that were adopted throughout the Roman Empire, as administrators recognized the benefits of respecting different spiritual traditions rather than attempting to impose uniform beliefs. Her approach to religious diversity demonstrated that cultural variety could strengthen rather than weaken social unity when managed with wisdom and respect. These religious innovations influenced spiritual development throughout the ancient world, contributing to the evolution of more inclusive and cosmopolitan forms of worship and community organization. As the first light of dawn begins to touch the eternal waters of the Nile, casting golden reflections that dance like memories across the gentle current, we find ourselves at the peaceful conclusion of our journey through the extraordinary life and enduring legacy of history's most remarkable queen. Let your thoughts drift softly now, like lotus petals floating downstream, carrying with them the profound understanding that Cleopatra's true immortality lies not in the myths and legends that surround her name, but in the countless ways her wisdom, innovations, and vision continue to enrich our world, more than 2,000 years after her mortal life came to its end. The gentle whisper of the ancient river carries with it the gratitude of all those who have benefited from her contributions to human knowledge, prosperity, and understanding. Her story reminds us that greatness is measured not by the length of one's reign or the extent of one's conquests, but by the positive changes one creates that outlast the brief span of any individual existence. Through her dedication to learning, her respect for diversity, her commitment to justice, and her vision of cooperation between different peoples and cultures, she built bridges across time that continue to connect us with the best aspirations of human civilization. Rest now in the peaceful knowledge that her remarkable journey from curious child to visionary leader offers eternal inspiration for anyone seeking to make their mark upon the world through wisdom, compassion, and service to others. Her legacy flows like the life-giving waters of the Nile itself, nourishing the growth of human potential wherever its influence reaches, reminding us that the pursuit of knowledge, the embrace of different cultures, and the commitment to creating prosperity for all people are the true foundations upon which lasting achievements are built. Let the gentle rhythm of the eternal river carry you now into the most peaceful of dreams, where the golden age of Alexandria still glimmers in the morning light, where the great library stands filled with the wisdom of ages, and where the spirit of history's most extraordinary queen continues to guide those who dare to dream of a world where understanding triumphs over ignorance, where cooperation conquers conflict, and where the light of human achievement shines as bright and eternal as the stars that watched over her remarkable reign so very long ago. Sleep now, dear traveler through time, and know that in your dreams you carry forward the most precious gift that Cleopatra's extraordinary life can offer: the understanding that each of us, in our own way and in our own time, has the power to contribute something beautiful and lasting to the great tapestry of human experience, just as she did when the world was young and Alexandria was the jewel of the ancient world, shining like a beacon of hope and wisdom beneath the eternal Egyptian sky. In the soft embrace of history's final chapter, as the last echoes of our gentle journey begin to fade like whispers on the evening breeze, let us pause to contemplate the profound truth that emerges from Cleopatra's extraordinary tale. Here was a woman who understood that true power lies not in commanding armies or accumulating wealth, but in nurturing the seeds of knowledge that would bloom long after the gardener has returned to dust. Picture her essence now, woven into the very fabric of civilization itself, like golden threads that strengthen the tapestry of human progress. Every time a leader chooses diplomacy over warfare, we glimpse her wisdom. Every time a scholar preserves ancient knowledge for future generations, we witness her dedication. Every time someone bridges the gap between different cultures through understanding and respect, we see her vision made manifest in our modern world. The libraries that dot our contemporary landscape, from the grandest universities to the humblest village reading rooms, carry within their walls the spirit of that great Alexandrian institution she so lovingly expanded. The books that line their shelves, written in dozens of languages and preserving the thoughts of countless civilizations, reflect her understanding that knowledge belongs to all humanity, not merely to the privileged few who happen to be born into positions of power and influence. The international organizations that work today to promote peace and cooperation between nations follow principles she pioneered when she sought to create lasting alliances based on mutual benefit, rather than conquest and subjugation. Her understanding that different peoples could work together while maintaining their unique identities provides a blueprint for harmony that remains as relevant today as it was in the ancient world. The women who serve as leaders in every field of human endeavor, from science and medicine to politics and business, walk paths that she helped to illuminate through her own remarkable example of combining intellectual brilliance with compassionate governance. Though the barriers she faced were different from those encountered by modern women, her demonstration that feminine wisdom could guide entire civilizations continues to inspire those who seek to shatter glass ceilings and expand opportunities for all people, regardless of gender. The environmental conservation efforts that protect our planet's precious resources echo the sustainable practices she implemented along the Nile Valley, showing that responsible stewardship of natural gifts ensures prosperity for future generations. Her understanding that short-term exploitation leads to long-term disaster offers guidance for addressing the ecological challenges that face our interconnected world. The medical advances that save millions of lives each year build upon foundations laid in the hospitals and research centers she established in Alexandria, where physicians from different traditions shared knowledge and techniques to advance the healing arts. The pharmaceutical innovations that emerge from modern laboratories follow research methodologies she pioneered, when Egyptian scholars systematically studied the properties of plants and minerals to develop new treatments for human ailments. The communication technologies that connect our global civilization in ways she could never have imagined still follow principles she understood about the importance of information sharing and cultural exchange. The internet that spans our world like an invisible web of knowledge reflects her vision of universal access to learning and understanding, though she achieved it through scrolls and scribes rather than fiber optic cables and satellites. The agricultural techniques that feed our planet's growing population incorporate innovations she developed to maximize crop yields while preserving soil fertility, demonstrating that ancient wisdom can still guide modern practice. The irrigation systems that bring water to arid regions follow engineering principles her specialists perfected along the banks of the life-giving Nile. The architectural marvels that grace our cities, combining beauty with functionality in ways that enhance both practical utility and spiritual inspiration, reflect design principles she championed when Alexandria became the jewel of the ancient world. The public spaces that bring communities together for celebration and learning echo the festivals and gatherings she organized to strengthen social bonds among diverse populations. The educational institutions that provide learning opportunities to children, regardless of their background, fulfill the vision she held of knowledge as a birthright rather than a privilege, ensuring that human potential can flourish wherever it appears. The emphasis modern schools place on multilingual and multicultural education reflects her understanding that true wisdom requires appreciation for the full spectrum of human experience and achievement. The scientific expeditions that explore our planet's most remote regions and venture into the depths of space follow the same spirit of curiosity that drove her to sponsor voyages of discovery into unknown territories. The maps they create and the knowledge they gather continue the work she began of expanding human understanding of our world and our place within it. The museums and cultural centers that preserve artistic treasures for future generations reflect her commitment to maintaining the creative achievements that express the highest aspirations of human civilization. The paintings, sculptures, and musical compositions they house continue traditions she nurtured when Alexandria became a beacon of artistic innovation and cultural synthesis. The diplomatic protocols that govern international relations still incorporate techniques she developed for negotiating between different cultures and interests, showing that respectful dialogue can achieve more lasting results than force or intimidation. The treaties that maintain peace between nations follow frameworks she established for creating mutual benefit through cooperation rather than zero-sum competition. The economic systems that promote prosperity through trade and cultural exchange build upon networks she created to connect distant regions in relationships that enriched all participants. The global marketplace that characterizes our modern world reflects her understanding that economic cooperation creates stronger bonds than political domination ever could. The legal frameworks that protect individual rights while maintaining social order incorporate principles she established for balancing personal freedom with collective responsibility. The courts that dispense justice according to consistent standards rather than arbitrary power follow precedents she set for fair and impartial administration of law. As the gentle currents of the eternal Nile carry our story toward its peaceful conclusion, let your mind rest upon the beautiful truth that Cleopatra's greatest achievement was not the preservation of Egyptian independence for 2 decades, but the creation of ideas and innovations that have enriched human civilization for more than 2 millennia. Her true monument is not built of stone or bronze, but of the countless lives that have been improved by the knowledge she preserved, the methods she developed, and the vision she shared of what humanity could accomplish through wisdom, cooperation, and dedication to the common good. The soft murmur of ancient waters reminds us that while individual reigns must end and earthly kingdoms must pass away, the contributions we make to human understanding and progress can flow forward through time like an endless river, touching shores we will never see and nourishing growth in gardens we will never walk. Her story teaches us that immortality is not granted to those who seek it for themselves, but to those who plant trees, whose shade will comfort generations yet unborn. Rest now in the peaceful understanding that every act of learning, every gesture of kindness toward those who are different from ourselves, every effort to preserve knowledge for future generations, and every attempt to build bridges rather than walls continues the work she began so long ago in that golden palace beside the Mediterranean Sea. Her legacy lives not in marble statues or golden coins, but in the better angels of human nature that she helped to awaken and that continue to guide us toward a more enlightened and compassionate world. Let the eternal rhythm of history's greatest river carry you now into the most serene of slumbers, where dreams are filled with the gentle wisdom of ages past and the bright promise of ages yet to come. Sleep peacefully, knowing that the light Cleopatra kindled in the ancient world continues to burn in every library, every laboratory, every classroom, and every heart that seeks to make our shared human journey a little brighter, a little kinder, and a little more worthy of the extraordinary gifts we have been given. In your dreams, may you hear the whisper of papyrus leaves rustling in Alexandria's great library, and may you know that the greatest stories never truly end, but flow forward like the Nile itself, eternal and ever renewing, carrying the seeds of wisdom toward distant shores and new gardens of knowledge will bloom beneath tomorrow's sun.